We've got 1.2 million head of calves sired every year by registered Charolais bulls. They have a home. I don't know that we've done a good enough job of creating broadened and deepened demand pathways. I think data connectivity is a really huge part of that. No, it's exciting. And again, it's nothing to be scared of. We've done it over and over again. We just need to know where the goalposts are, and then we'll continue to innovate and evolve.
Welcome to the Future of Beef Show, produced in partnership with Drovers and Breeder. This is the #1 podcast for progressive ranchers and feeders looking to run smarter, more profitable, next-generation operations. I'm your host, Jim Johnson, from the Brands and Barbed Wire podcast, joined by Dr. Jessica Sperber, feedlot specialist at the University of Nebraska, and Ian Wheal, founder of Breeder, the cattle tech company helping producers raise, track, and trade high-performing cattle. As the beef industry accelerates towards data, traceability, and consumer trust, breed associations are often dismissed as old-school institutions. In this episode, we sit down with Brett Spader to explain why breed associations matter more than ever before. Brett Spader is president of the American International Charolais Association, with a career that spans livestock marketing, tech startups, and breed advocacy. Brett brings a unique lens to the evolving role of breed associations, focusing not just on pedigree preservation, but on data-driven trust and future-focused value creation. This episode is sponsored by Corteva Agriscience. When weeds and brush get in the way, you'll find the solution at rangeandpasture.com. So Brett, welcome to the Future Beef Show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me here. Now, before we get started, I do watch the video component and listen to the podcast, and I've noticed that there's kind of a black-hided beast pictured right over my shoulder. And since we're talking about the future of beef, I thought maybe that we could make sure we were going to focus on breed complementarity and heterosis and some of those things that we know to be important solutions. So I brought you guys a gift.
Okay.
And this picture actually, I think, does a really nice job talking about the future of beef. This is the first set of AI-enabled calves by registered Charolais sires in a feed yard in Southwest Kansas. And so I'm excited to talk about that AI function in terms of real-time weight efficiency, understanding, and a whole swath of interesting data insights. So I'm going to take a moment and replace this, if that's okay.
All right.
And again, really appreciate you guys having me here.
Yeah. For those of you, yeah.
So for folks that are listening and not viewing, Brett is standing up and replacing the Angus book with a picture of a Charolais cross steer.
To be fair, he hasn't knocked it down, so maybe he still likes the odd smoky.
The Charolais cross steer.
Oh no, there it goes.
I didn't check the sex. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you just happen to carry a picture of a Charolais.
Oh yeah.
With you all, okay. Yeah. When you travel. Okay.
You never know when opportunity is going to strike. So.
Yeah, and your wife's photo.
Yeah. Nope, absolutely. Now we're excited at the Charolais breed, and we've seen a lot of innovation in the last year since I started there, and so we're really glad to have the opportunity to sit down and talk about some of that today.
So you're fairly new at the breed association exec position, but it's not new to you and your family. Why don't you give us a little history? Yeah. About yourself and your family and sort of how you got to where you're at Charolais now.
Yeah, great question. Some days I wonder. So, no, I have always really enjoyed association work. I've really enjoyed working for seed stock producers. You know, I see the value that and the impact that they have on production beef systems. And my career started out of school with Kansas Livestock Association. And that was a really interesting way for a young person to learn about all facets of the industry, from certainly seed stock, cow, calf stocker operators. They represent certainly cattle feeders in the packing sector. So for a young guy to do that for 7 years, to travel, that was really a great time in my career, and got to work with a lot of great people. And at that time, I was working ring at sales, so I could see the conduit between value that we would get in genetic selection, and also started to get more understanding about what drove bull buyers to do what they do and the important role that they play in the industry. And so after 7 years there, I started with DV Auction, which was essentially a startup at that time, and worked with the owner, Dan Brose, and several other really talented staff. And that was at the forefront of online bidding and videos. I'd done some solo man video work before that. And so we were able to really ramp up this whole media data connectivity as a part of that team. And of course, we've seen what online bidding has done throughout the course of the industry. And it's been really exciting to see them and other companies and the impact that technology can have in a really practical sense when it comes to understanding how to market cattle or just being able to do market research on genetics is probably one of the really key things to come out of that. And then to treat it also like a media source. I still believe in print advertising, but increasingly, we've got to create those really customized digital reasons for producers to be online, to get information, and to ultimately, be a part of the solution as we move forward. So after about 7.5 years there as well, I actually had done a nonprofit there and had done a startup. So I decided I'd do a nonprofit startup. Not really, but that actually was a bit of the opening of the door for Charolais and my role here. I had a great deal of respect for the exec, Neil Orth. He was a longtime family friend. And certainly someone I admired. And so I leased the back half of the Charolais building and built the Beef Center. And essentially that company was a nonprofit that provided on-demand staffing and software to beef breed associations. So stayed right in the vein that I'd been working through and enjoyed that work very much. And then about 4 years as president of Angus Media, similar great group of people to work with, great producers to work with, bringing more digital aspects in at all times. So continued on that route and then started a digital agency called Livestock Launch. And Rick Causatorto is my partner in that. And coincidentally, I had the opportunity to take the role at Charolais, and he had the opportunity to take the role at Brangus as the exec. So it's a fun way to consider your network and kind of these long-standing relationships that you build out through the course of a career. But as far as family aspects, it's a bit of a generational mantle. I mean, it's daunting some days, but you always remind yourself that no one does it alone, and it's a really rewarding thing. So my father worked for the Angus Association the entirety of his career, and a lot of people may or may not know this, but my mother also heavily involved in the beef industry. First female president of the Missouri Cattlemen's Association, several leadership and volunteer roles in NCBA and other trade groups. And then, of course, the fun thing to think about is sometimes people say, well, how did you end up at Charolais? And it wasn't even necessarily that open door when I started to work at the Beef Center in the Charolais office. It goes way back before that. And I think so many of our stories in the beef industry do, particularly in breed associations. It's very much a generational approach. So Neil reminded me that I met him when I was 13, and I do remember this. I was actually at a BIF conference with Dad, and I always believe in collaboration and innovation. And he was good friends with my dad, but he was also friends with my mom and my aunts and my uncles and my grandfather and grandmother, because he used to be Neil Orth. He used to be in that territory in Illinois when he worked for drovers as a young man. So those relationships literally go back that far. And that is just a true testament to any opportunities that I've had, is to see that there's always people that are looking out for you clear back that far. And certainly was looking out for me before I was even born. And so it's been really rewarding to be able to come to Charolais and play some small part in some of the success that they're seeing today.
Yeah, I never knew your dad, but all the stories I ever heard was, people regarding him as one of the best, if not the best exec Angus had ever had. And so I think that's neat, the sort of generational history that you talk about. And then I had the opportunity to meet your mom a couple of summers ago at a BIF conference, and she was like, "Oh yeah, do you know Brett?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And so
somehow that's turned. It used to always be like, "That's Sherry's boy," and in some cases, limited cases,
right?
Are you Brett's mom?
So that was fun, but I think it gives you a unique perspective, right? To be able to have sort of grown up in that business, to see breed associations, back then, and then to be a part of it today, right? So So how has a breed association evolved over the last, 40, 50 years?
Yeah. Some of the early versions of AICA, of our organization, date clear back to the 40s. And so, as I was preparing for this and thinking about this, and as we had some discussions over it, it's kind of fascinating to think about, and I say this about every nonprofit. You always get into these understandings that the reasons why these were initially created in the 40s and 50s, those have very much changed. I mean, we're facing totally different reasons why we deserve or don't deserve to exist as a nonprofit organization. I argue there's a lot of reasons why we do. It's our job every day to be able to tell that story and to never stop innovating in that relentless pursuit of adding that value and, more importantly, being a resource for those producers. And that's what I enjoy. And so thinking back all that way, the cattle were always a conduit. I mean, Charolais cattle have been around since, as early as 800 AD. And so people have always used cattle as a conduit for different things, for adding value, for profitability, for relationships. And we're lucky to be able to have a career in this and to enjoy it very much. And thanks to a really versatile set of cattle in the Charolais breed. So it's kind of a heavy weight some days when you think about it, because there is so much responsibility to it to be able to very fairly create opportunities for members, but also, best position members as we start to see the importance of innovation and the importance of just understanding why we would need to be in existence, say, in 50 years from now.
Well, it's interesting. I think as I think back to early associations, I mean, they were originally developed, and obviously there were associations outside of the United States when we brought some of those cattle in, but they largely just kept pedigree information,
purity,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and transition 100 years or whatever it's been, 75 years, and now we're looking at way different in all the information, all the data and everything we collect, and what a breed association does is quite a bit different. But I think it's interesting. I mean, we look at, and they got associations for everything, right?
Sure.
Dogs and cats and everything, And so, but I think the beef cattle associations and dairy cattle associations are quite a bit different than a lot of those others, and we're able to provide that additional service to the membership.
Well, it's their livelihood, and I'm a member of horse and dog organizations, and not that it's not some of those people's livelihood, but it's almost entirely our members' livelihood. And so we do need to be really aware of new challenges that come out in the industry. New opportunities is probably a better way to look at it. We know we move a little slower in agriculture, and that's okay. We're a little more steady. We're a little bit more watching security and making sure something's going to work, because our nation's food supply really depends on it. So now I think it's one of the more rewarding things that a young person could really consider. I didn't go through school to do association work. I was actually working on equine reproductive physiology as an undergrad. So, but had that opportunity to start to see exactly what that meant, continue to see what that meant. And again, it's a great way of life, and it's hopefully one that's very important for seed stock producers. It's amazing when you think about the genetic change that we've seen through our beef industry. And that is because of the efforts of men and women in the seed stock industry. And so we would hope that breed associations were always in a position to continue to enable that.
We know the best in the beef industry watch this show, so we want to hear from you. We'll pick one listener to win this exclusive Future of Beef Yeti cooler. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram, send us your guest ideas, or just drop us a message. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it was very exciting for Jim and I, especially to have you on the show as two Charolais breeders, lovers. So yeah, Jim obviously from the seed stock side of things, and then my parents run a commercial operation with Charolais bulls, and we just have such an appreciation, like you mentioned earlier, for heterosis. And so moving forward, how do you see breed associations optimizing terminal traits and terminal outcomes, but then also obviously staying true to those maternal side of the industry as well? So what do you see moving forward? What's the future vision of breed associations and the role that they can play in beef cattle production?
Yeah, I think it deserves to be a systems approach. And these are things that we talk about in other scope of other businesses. And I think in a lot of ways, we're rediscovering 2025 financial fundamentals in and around some things that we need to be reminded of how important it is. Breed complementarity, understanding heterosis, but bringing technology into the picture to have an even firmer understanding and being able to use precision agriculture to truly understand what that impact is. So for us, it's all about collaboration. Like I mentioned before, no one does it alone. Mm-hmm. I mean, we seek to fully understand our strengths as an organization. We're unique as an organization. I mean, and Jim knows this, we have open board meetings. We have members in the room during board meetings. We have the vast majority of our decisions get made at a committee level, and in most cases, they just kind of rubber stamp all the way through the board actual process, because those board members and regular members are in the meeting. We even Zoom those meetings. So it's totally a flip of the other organizations that I'd worked with at the Beef Center and so on, because it opens you up in a really freeing way. And so I think a big part of that collaboration, and we know this, we're working on several joint projects, is just being secure enough in what you do and what you bring to the table that you're not afraid to use technology to fully understand what it is and what the impact is. And you're not afraid to use those tools to continue to improve what you do, but also being really secure enough to recognize from a systems approach, we are not necessarily trying to be all things to all people. I think that's actually one of the most insecure things you can do as an organization. And recognizing that increasingly, this business model that I'm tasked to keep successful for the next 20, 30, 50 years, like I love Simon Sinek, finite, infinite games. This is not a finite game that we're in. There's no fourth quarter, there's no winner, and there's no loser. And so a big part is just really, truly understanding how you can continue to evolve around those needs that members have, and then who can pull in besides you, whether that's other breed organizations, other private companies, to enable the ability to serve those members, and then rinse and repeat.
Well, I think that's been one of the really interesting things about even your last year. Like, I know I'm watching from the outside, when you've got every single member in on those meetings, like there's a risk to putting yourself out there and taking risks and innovating and doing that sort of stuff, because any one person in that room can try and knock you down, right? But I think I've been very impressed from the outside in terms of how you're managing to drive innovation and think about innovation within Charolais. And Charolais is you have to partner, like, just by the fact of heterosis, like that is the breed that you like really has a strength around that. How do you think about innovation? And, we talked a bit about last night of, breed associations are almost the first co-op within beef, within beef, and, you want everyone to succeed together. And so, without, leaving anyone behind, but at the same time, not listening to just one person. How do you drive that culture and innovation within Charolais? And how do you think breed associations need to do that into the future?
I'm not sure I'm equipped to have the best answers. I know what we try to do. I think everyone's going to be a little different in terms of their philosophies as an organization and what their membership requires. I agree. First co-ops. I also agree. Beef breed associations were the first startups. And so being able to look at the similarities, and maybe it's just because I've got some startup background in my career, startups are out there to solve a problem, to fulfill a need, and you're sprinting to get it done as well and as quickly and with as much impact as you possibly can. And so that's what we talk about as staff, is how do you treat a breed association in some ways like a startup? What is that problem you're trying to fix? Well, it's those needs that the members have. And yes, it was a bit of an adjustment to realize that you're going to be in this room and it's not going to be a closed door session. It's not, but that actually turned out to be the most freeing thing of all of it, because it forces you to plan and be more strategic not only in terms of bringing that industry insight into those members to help them understand where you're sitting and hoping to guide and hoping to help. But there's a great Andy Stanley quote that talks about, if you're really committed to being right and you're proven to not be right, all you have to do is change your mind, and then all of a sudden you're right again. And that is something that's stuck with me, especially lately, because we go sit in those rooms and we are representing all those people, and the creativity that comes out of that, instead of having to make decisions, watch our board and help our board make a decision and then communicate out what happened or why or how, that all happens with those members that are there listening and watching. And then they go do that for us. And it's already well vetted, well thought through. And in most cases, if we didn't get at someone's perspective in the early stages of preparation and communication, it comes out there. And it's not a big deal at all for us to table something until the next meeting. So we've actually increased or are increasing the number of meetings that we have, because again, we've got the freedom to do these things virtually and they are open. So in some cases, we kind of just circle back and bring that on later. So yeah, I think it's just a perpetual form of discovery.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, look, in these established organizations that have been around for a long time, it's such a hard thing because, we all, look, I'm in the startup world, but as you get into bigger companies, you become more adverse to making mistakes. And the only way you innovate is you've got to make a few mistakes. And so I think, when you look at what you're thinking about within Charolais and that culture and like learning from people, because that also is where breed associations have been hard. Like often you need someone to innovate within who's a breeder to do stuff and then bring that into the rest of the team. Like, how do you think about that within Charolais in terms of how you're going to drive innovation moving forward? Like working with the base, working individually, making decisions as a group and everyone going in the same direction.
Yeah. There's always needs to be a quick parameter check that says if you're doing a lot of things right, you can do a few things wrong. Yeah. And I would say this board and this membership has been so understanding of that, to know that our intent as staff, our intent as board and membership, we're gonna go do our very best. Our intent is right. It's to create success for those using the genetics and ultimately create multi-generational opportunities, because we've done that well. Yeah. And we remind ourselves that we've done that well. And then you have to continually be ready to hear and listen and understand and listen. And that sounds really cliche, but you have to be able to understand enough of the industry to bring ideas in, to network and collaborate with people. And then you have to slow down enough to listen to how it impacts people. And then you have to help them understand. And then you have to listen, right? So it's just this kind of constant cycle to stay committed to. And as long as you have those access points, and part of this is having a great staff too. Don't get me wrong. We're one of 3 breeds that still have a field staff. That's an important part of, you could call it offense and defense, but it's really a conduit to be able to pull information in real time. Yeah. And also just having such an open governance and an open state of mind, which probably in some ways starts with me in some ways, hopefully. Yeah. And also staff and everyone understands this isn't a risk to our security to do something different. It's actually our ability to move forward. Because again, we know that we're not solving the same set of problems that they did in the 40s and 50s.
Charolais, I see Charolais from one view. Everyone sees different breed associations for their thing. Like when you try and articulate, both the value of the Charolais Association moving forward, like where you see its place in the industry, but also some of the challenges you think people, or more generally breed associations, need to address. Like it'd be good to just get some of those thoughts, because there's a lot of people listening to this show was like, okay, well, how do we help them? With that mindset, how do we help?
Yeah. So. For us, one of our really key tenets right now is telling the story of our value through data. So you're going to see some things happening right now, and certainly many more over the next 90 days that again, allow us to get that objective proof in ways that we've never seen before or have forgotten about. And it's not a matter of, we as an association don't pick winners and losers within the membership. We create opportunities and we create tools, and then you go use them as you see fit. We would hope that bull buyers would see it the same way. So that's where these collaborative discussions come into play of working with other organizations and just being so wide open to it. I think as we watch that evolve, we just always have to stay very nimble in terms of how we prioritize, because we are a nonprofit. And you know, that brings a certain amount of risk in, just because you're not sitting necessarily on a bank of money to continue to do this, but probably just ushers in the need to communicate that value in ways that we've not thought about before. So yeah, I feel like that is really a primary focus of our board and staff and membership right now. For us, you know, we've got 1.2 million head of calves sired every year by registered Charolais bulls. They have a home. I don't know that we've done a good enough job of creating broadened and deepened demand pathways. I think data connectivity is a really huge part of that. I'm excited to talk about some of those things, but you know, being able to.
We'll wait to open that can of worms.
Oh, okay, no, that's why I'm here. No, that's good, but no, it's exciting, and again, it's nothing to be scared of. I mean, it's because we've done it over and over again. We just need to know where the goalposts are, and then we'll continue to innovate and evolve. I mean, I've seen it. Jim's seen it firsthand. You know, there was some concerns around docility in the breed in the last 20 years. We lost some bull buyers and spots from it. The breeders did a fantastic job of addressing it. And we're actually releasing a docility EPD to continue to create more of those tools for those that want to do it. Birth weight, whatever it may be. It's a very versatile set of genetics, and the role that they play in the industry. Like I say, I don't necessarily look at it as competing with other breed organizations. I look at adding value to 1.1 million head of feeder calves, and being able to help industry stakeholders fully understand through technology what that value is, and then being able to create a feedback mechanism that brings it back to our members to create a set of tools to allow them to do what they've always done. I mean, they've proven it since the 40s to continue to move forward.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as I look at, and I'm uniquely positioned that I am part of a breed association. I've worked with a lot of breed associations, but also involved in private industry that's doing a lot of innovative things as well. And so I think as a breed association, we have to be careful that we don't fall into that blockbuster model, right? And that, you know, we're a store that sells DVDs, and all of a sudden, you know, we didn't innovate, we didn't do things, and now we're irrelevant. And so I think that, you know, if we can sort of be like Netflix, you know, and I think a lot of people forget that Netflix started out as a mail order, you send you DVDs, but they evolved instead of going out of business. And now, you know, they're one of the premier, if not the premier streaming service out there. And so, you know, breed associations, you have to figure out where that is and what they need to do to evolve and change and adapt and serve their members. And I think that's part of what you're doing and some of the things you're doing. So tell us about some of that.
Industry responsive is a term that gets thrown around a lot. I argue we've probably done it very well for a very long time. And any limit to how it's not a willingness that's ever kept genetics from being as industry responsive. Our breeders will do it in a heartbeat. They want to create success for those bull buyers. They want to create success for those cattle feeders. It's probably getting those feedback mechanisms really right, and being sure that we're arming so much information around those cattle to allow them to do what I know they do. But again, the openness of it, they bring us the challenges. Like, this isn't me sitting around architecting a plan. We're getting ready to start some, what I call mid-range strategic planning. I don't want anyone to ever show up to one of those board meetings surprised at something that we're going to talk about. So we've got a really sound long-term, long-range plan. We've got a very sound operational plan. Obviously, we've been doing 6 to 18-month sprints in terms of data initiatives and membership initiatives. But for us now, we're moving out to that 3 to 5 year to say, okay, what are these areas of need and focus as defined by a membership? And when I talk about a membership, I don't just mean seed stock members. And that's a big part of where we go moving forward in terms of utilizing commercial records and welcoming those bull buyers in as an important part of our membership. And then how do it's a prioritization. It's not even changing the structure of your organization. It's a prioritization, knowing that we're a nonprofit. So how do we use that board? How do we hear from the membership? How do we use staff to figure out creative plans? And we're just scratching the surface on using creativity to tackle these problems. I agree. There's like some really big changes in the beef industry that we feel like breed complementarity and heterosis and maternal and terminal are a really important solution to. I loved it at BIF because they were, well, how are we going to make 1,700 pound steers? Well, in some cases we already are. And then how are we going to keep our 1,200 pound cow? This is where we feel like fundamentally breed complementarity and heterosis gets you there very quickly. But then where do you start to put in those finer points to say, okay, how do we make a list? How do we prioritize resources? And then how do we invest in things that, not to make money, but to extend that mission and amplify that mission in such a way that we're going to look back in not 20 years. It used to be 20 years. It used to be 5, 10 years. We're going to look back in a year because it's moving so much faster than it was. Aren't you glad we started that a year ago? Yes, we're seeing all that impact now.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you mentioned collaboration a lot, Brett. And so obviously for me being on the feedlot side of things, right, I see some of the most superior feedlot cattle with crossbred genetics, right? They're hybrid vigor. They're the smoke heifer steer that's behind you on that picture, right? That's me being a bit biased, but some of our most profitable animals in the feedlot are the ones that have hybrid vigor, and they marry the British marbling and quality grading with the continental growth parameters, right? And so obviously our feedlot producers have been paid very well, a premium over the years from a certain organization, right? And so we understand that premium has done a lot of good things for our industry. But for individuals, commercial producers listening to this that are thinking, well, maybe I want a little bit more growth in my calves, and maybe I need to stop breeding the same breed together for commercial operation. What opportunities is Charolais looking toward for the future to try and still get premium feedback on, or premium opportunity on, calves that do not have a black hide?
Ever wondered if you could be getting more out of your cattle?
Breeder is the first technology company that's able to track and optimize cattle from conception all the way to the rail. This puts the power of data into the hands of the rancher and enables them to improve their profit line quicker than they ever have before.
My decision to partner with Breeder was made largely after seeing a demo where I realized what Breeder's doing is unlike anyone else in our industry. Connecting the data from the packing plant back to the feedlot, the stocker backgrounders, and the cow-calf, even connecting that data to the purebred breeder, will just open the door to improvement at a scale and a speed that we have never seen in this industry before.
I believe Breeder's putting ranchers in the driver's seat. We can make breeding decisions based on large amounts of data very quickly. The calves that are produced, they have a higher cutout value, their ribeyes are more profitable, and it plays back to us.
As I'm out around the country, people are asking me about Breeder, and I always recommend Breeder. It's the tool for the future.
Head to breeder.co and book a demo with the team today.
Yeah, well, that needed to happen first. We can all sit around and say, what if, what maybe, but we increase quality grade base. We're using, in many cases, maternal genetics, because it is about breed complementarity in the feed yard. And I'm glad you brought that up, but it's also about understanding that systems approach and knowing that there's going to be beef master and Brangus-based cow herds. I mean, these were clients of mine. These were friends of mine in the South. And that is how we're going to get the most effective use. As a beef industry, we've always done more for less and more with less. And that is just how you start to do that from an environmental perspective. And we start to think about heterosis and other areas tied to British-based breeds, working to complement each other at a maternal side. And then we step in and really truly view our role as how do we create those genetics to best complement that. TSI, our terminal index, was the very first balanced trade index in the industry. A lot of people don't realize that. From the get-go, it was created to select the right genetics or create direction for the right genetics for Charolais bloodlines to complement a British-based cow herd. So everything we've done to this stage has worked. Sometimes we don't pat ourselves on the back well enough. But again, you look at the production of the beef industry, you look at being able to do more with less and the great work that we've done. Like, everything has gone according to plan, and we had to get there. But Now we're ready for phase 2 or phase 5, 6, 7, 8. And so it really comes down to using technology to really optimize these things and to get clarity around these things. And for us, it's really heavily centered around AI. And so one thing that we did, we created, again, from an association perspective, an opportunity for producers to put cattle on feed. And we essentially, that program's called Profit Driver. And we 100K tested those crossbred animals. They're on a feed intake, water intake system. We just harvested those cattle about a week ago. Everything went according to plan. And we're really excited to start to wrap that up and share it with the industry. We're looking at nutritive content and a study of the actual beef product in a variety of ways and tying that back into those production practices and genetics. But probably the most exciting thing in that is being able to use our AI algorithms, which are fed and baselined using our genetic evaluation information, and then ultimately are the key to unlocking the understanding of being able to predict red meat yield pre-harvest and being able to see a real-time look at growth, some early health aspects tied to behavior, and then also some aspects of bunk displacement to be able to get at a picture of feed efficiency in real time. And so it's, again, not necessarily probably about picking winners and losers with that, but it's saying we've got now an opportunity to optimize the management and for those cattle feeders to understand a procurement strategy, especially as we tie in supply chain function and retail relationships in it alongside that. And now all of a sudden, we could always measure quality grade on an individual basis. And thanks to some work that Dale Werner and others are doing in the post-harvest space with AI, you're going to have a really great set of insights on red meat yield post-harvest. But how do we make that actionable? Well, our thesis is to put those tools in the hands of cattle feeders to help them understand their business better than ever before. And these genetics, which are just the framework, which they then fill in, how do we help them move their profitability 1%, 2%, 3% and how they manage the cattle? And then how do we help them continue to understand that registered bulls are a really important part of that equation to kickstart that whole conversation of optimizing everything? And so the big step that's actually one that's held us back for so long is we as seed stock producers, again, we've done the best job we can. We measure these traits and we select for these genetics in a seed stock environment. We're trying to predict what that set of genetic packages is going to do out here through the course of the industry, but we're doing it almost blind in some ways. And what we're talking about is being able to flood that with hundreds of thousands and millions of records to continue to shore up and understand what those decisions are. And that really is tied to the ability to look at facial recognition, body conformation, and nose print recognition, and a kinship model. So I love technology. It has to be incredibly applicable, incredibly easy to be widely adopted. And that's the great thing about this as a component of our genetic verification of feeder calves is it's as simple as these producers having a video shot on their iPhone of the herd bulls that are there that they purchased, and then being able to shoot a video of those calves, and then ultimately they go into an AI-enhanced cattle feeding environment. So it is out there. I get that. And it's a pilot project, but we just installed the second facility. And so we're excited because it is far exceeded. And that's probably a testament to AI and technology in general. What I thought was probably where we would be in a year is where we were in 2 or 3 months. And it's probably going to just keep going even faster than that. So no matter what the hide color is, and I'm not saying black, red, spotted, smoky, that really doesn't matter as much as being able to sit down and tell the story of the genetics and the genetic potential and the opportunities that buying that registered bull opens up to enter these broadened supply chain opportunities.
And I think it's important that we just recently had an episode with Lauren and Marshall where they were talking about AI, and it was a different AI than what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
right?
Noted.
And so, artificial intelligence is And sometimes we have to clarify that because we might have a listener that's confused, going, "Wait a second, he's using AI in the feed yard?" What?
Yeah, good point.
And so,
Good point.
And it's a really it's super interesting, that project that you're working on, and I think the biggest challenge we've had in this industry, and we deal with a lot with sort of data moving from the seed stock to the cow calf to the feed yard to the packer. Then who owns the data all the way through? How do you get that feedback loop? The easiest way is own the cattle, right? Sure. Like if you want to do it, own the cattle. To be able to get the million records, I think I'm super passionate about how breed associations play such a big role in this industry in terms of helping the small producer have all these resources that, some of the guys who are if they're doing 100,000 head through a supply chain, they can go find these resources independently, and people are doing that. But the breed association represents everyone else. But to do that, we started it on pedigree. So we started it on data. That's where a breed association came from. And now we've got more and more data. So how do you think about making it super easy for data to come in, data to go out? Because that's always been a challenge from our side. People are using our system to scan tissue samples, match it up to EIDs, collect phenotypes. But then when we get to the point of putting it into the breed association, there's like a block, and we cannot get those phenotypes in. And I just see there's a whole tech future there of just make it easy, and producers will give you more data. Right. And look, we can talk about getting it out as well, but just the getting in would be, I feel like there's a huge room, not just with Charolais, but with every breed association on that side.
Yeah, I agree. And you bring up a good point about who owns the data. And this is why breed associations need to exist moving forward, because we're a nonprofit. We're not for profit, because our governance is open, because we can't work with cattle feeders that want to adopt the technology if they don't provide those records back to us. Mm-hmm. And they always view it, obviously, as I would, as a competitive disadvantage to arm the person that they're procuring cattle from with too much information so that they know the value. But what it is we go through these booms and busts with these cycles. It's more of a leveling of that. And to me, that is an amazing opportunity for multi-generational producer success. Every member virtually that I know is up at night thinking about how their kids and grandkids could carve out a living in the beef industry. And being able to create more of that collaboration through data connectivity. Sure, they're not going to make quite as much on the absolute peaks, but they're also not going to lose it. And trust me, for a young person and all the barriers of entry to come into the beef industry, they are not able to make enough on a peak right now to weather the storm of the downside. And so being able to tie that in closely, it's not going to be for everyone. I don't need it to be. I don't need every single head of native cattle to go on this system. Again, I'm just lifting the value on 1.1, 1.2 million head.
I'd have to say that mindset's changing though. You speak to feed yards now and they're like, well,
I would agree with that.
It used to be it was 5% prime, and now I want it to be 30% prime. Whatever that jump is, the feed yards recognize, unless they're giving some data feedback, how do they know that they should breed better genetics?
Yeah, data means nothing without insights.
Yeah, without those insights, without the ability to drive a decision on the commercial cow-calf operation or even at the seed stock operation to change the breeding, I think that is changing. Now, it's not the whole industry, but there is people they are very much aligned, not vertically integrated, but they're trying to align that data flow and coordinate it through that supply chain. And I think, the big thing for me is what we don't want is breed associations for that data to sit somewhere else. The data we have in breeder is not our data, it's the producer's data, but we want to make it easy for them to get it into the place where it can add value. And that's breed associations are a massive part of that.
Yeah.
And, we'll put it into genomic there's all these things, but the breed association, I think, should be the heart that drives that for all the reasons you just said.
Yeah, I agree. And it's exciting. Again, it's creative looks. There's, again, reasons why we find ourselves here. And it's not even negative. It just is how it's evolved. And so being able to understand the role that I almost am going to try to stop using the word data, because I think it kind of turns some people off sometimes. It's just really information. And I know that's a small logistic, but it's just, and that's kind of our tagline, connected cattle make confident decisions. Yeah. And so it's not necessarily, because I think sometimes you talk to a bull buyer and you start talking about data, and they may not feel equipped to have that conversation right there. But if you're telling them that you're going to allow for more information that ultimately feeds more value and gives them more understanding, more insights. That's something I think they get excited about because it's risk mitigation, really,
Right.
for them and for the cattle feeders. And again, not all. They get to choose how they want to operate at all points. That's the great thing about the U.S. beef industry is we all get to choose. And again, that's a breed association model. We don't pick winners and losers. We don't tell you. I get a kick out of it. People are like, well, will my fieldman tell me how to breed cattle? Absolutely not. That is the member's job. It's our job to accentuate opportunities for them to go have success in a variety of different directions. And again, you can't get into this optimization space without recognizing that there's a need for a variety of different genetics in the beef space. There's a need, certainly, we argue, for terminal and maternal heterosis. And there's just too much variance, and we want there to be. And there's too much independent thought, and we want there to be. And we want to come in alongside that and empower more of that moving forward, because that's what keeps a secure food system for the U.S. beef industry.
There's nothing greater than seeing your cattle grazing on lush green pasture.
Oh yeah, and nothing ruins that view like weeds and brush soaking up all the moisture and nutrients. Regardless of precipitation, we have to take care of our pastures. It doesn't rain grass.
The passion for cattle ranching starts early. So should the protection. Let's keep our pastures in good hands with Corteva Agriscience. To learn more, visit rangeandpasture.com.
I think, as we go on and further and, other podcast episodes, etc., we're really talking about the future of beef, right? And where we're at as an industry. But the reality of it all is that if you're a producer that chooses not to go down some of these very extreme pathways and you're just choosing to continue on with your 70 head cow operation, there will always be a feed yard buyer who is going to buy your cattle. There are feed yards that make incredible money on buying high, powerful, high quality genetic cattle because they know how to manage them. And there are feed yards that make incredible money on their cattle by buying third cuts at the auction market because they know how to manage those cattle. And so we don't ever want producers to feel like if I don't jump on board with the latest trend that I'm going to fall super far behind, because there will always be a buyer for your cattle. The difference is what are your profit and your margins? What's your profit and margins on those cattle?
Well, again, more information.
Yeah.
When I started, and this actually predates my time at Charolais, but when I started working in and around people that were doing, I had to really retrain my thought process. The problems I thought I was solving for, boy, was I wrong. They weren't enough. It wasn't a good use of the work. And so you mentioned being able to put small sets of cattle together from high risk environments. AI can help with that. Mm-hmm. Think about shipping logistics. Think about being able to gather and add value when you understand the genetics behind small sets of calves. That's one of the more exciting things for some of our members that may not be large scale operators, is to say they get access to a actual value driven market, not a value perception market. And they're not being discounted as much as they could have been. And then you start to think about high risk cattle. And again, we're not trying to be in the animal health space. We'd want to be a complement to the animal health space. But if you're dealing with high risk cattle and that is your specialty, behavioral indicators of cattle going off feed and some of the things that we've seen already in the pilot project are really fascinating. And so there's going to be different tools. And I don't want to make it sound like Charolais is going to be the only AI function breed association tool out there. I don't want that to be that way. I think, again, for those maternal heterosis partners, they've got their own story to tell. They've got their own specialties to lean into. And I shouldn't just lump it all as AI. It is innovation. It's technology. It's collaboration. And being open to explore those things, we just haven't thought of the right questions yet in some cases, but we will.
So have you guys had any, worry or pushback from producers saying like, I don't understand technology at this level or artificial intelligence at this level, and how do I implement this on my operation but not feel completely overwhelmed with having to understand the intricacies of AI?
That was one of the hardest and most exciting things to figure out, because for bull buyer, a registered Charolais bull buyer, it is as simple as proving that you bought registered and transferred registered Charolais bulls. And it is as simple as shooting a cell phone video. That's it. So that enters into that value chain. So now, just like any kind of widely accepted technology, I mean, your Google Maps or whatever it may be, it became very easy. And so all the hard work was done on the back end, and you see the value without really changing much about your management practices. And so there's value propositions all the way up and down the line here. But as a general rule, cattle feeders that are going to adopt this, they're going to probably love data to a certain degree, right? So they're developing that understanding and ultimately echoing back those market signals and genetic selection signals in ways that can come back in this open governance, very fair genetic population advancement approach. Again, it's not about picking winners and losers. It's about providing that information back for people to choose how they want to interact with it. And so I think for producers, as we've had those conversations, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop when we're explaining it. But then as we explain it, they're like, oh, okay, well, that does make some sense. And then again, if they struggle with AI from a personal reason in any way, you don't have to do it at all. We'll continue to develop new programs in R that are going to benefit those buyers of Charolais genetics. We'll continue to do that. So we've made it an easy on ramp, and are working to figure out the rest is through the rest of the chain.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Sometimes as I work with breed associations and breeders that register with those breed associations, they feel like a lot of times a breed association is driving them towards one direction or another direction or whatever through EPDs or now AI technology, whatever. But really what they're doing is providing them the tools to make the breeding decisions they want to make. If you have breeders that chase extremes, and that doesn't mean you have to. That just means that maybe you want to stay in the middle. Maybe that's your breeding philosophy, whatever that is. It doesn't mean that you're right or they're right and you're wrong. Just they're chasing extremes, and you're using the tool for a balance trait effect or whatever that is. And so I think that's the beauty of a breed association is there is opportunity for everybody, and not to look at it as, we're pushing everything, the breed association is pushing everything one way. That's not necessarily the case. We're just providing tools for them to use at their discretion.
Yeah. And we're talking about AI here, but you're offering genomic tools. You're
Absolutely.
There's lots of other tools that you are offering and education that you're offering up for those, and it's all opt-in, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of all of this. It's like you can opt in. You don't have to do it. So.
We're doing some really cool life cycle assessment work right now because I'm with you. I mean, I've tried to be a part of helping seed stock producers at many phases of my career communicate their brand fundamentals, why they are seed stock producers, to bull buyers. And I've done 4 sets of market research around bull buyer market research across different entities. And it always fascinates me because EPDs are very important as a part of that selection, but it's very hard to fully understand financial impact of those decisions. And so that's where some of the life cycle assessment work starts to come into me. It builds a frame, whether it's a frame for AI to work in and around to make potential recommendations or to assist you in optimizing the development of those genetics, or whether it's just a frame for you to understand where your risk tolerance is. Because again, I fully believe, and this is where the association model works so well, we need people pushing the envelope, like you said, and we also need people creating fundamentally sound cattle for what their philosophies are. And then we need to make the opportunity for them to communicate those things out there to their prospective bull buyers. And then we've missed this huge gap in terms of data connectivity. That's where the story stops. And that's not okay. We've put too much work into changing these genetic populations to allow the story to stop there. So being able to continue to tell the story of those genetics all the way through that gets really exciting.
And that starts with, so one thing I do believe is like associations need to start embracing the commercial cow herd.
Yes,
a
100%.
lot more. And there's a lot for them to offer. Like the commercial cow-calf operations are now doing genomics, like they've never done before. Like,
Sure.
But yet that'll go, not to say that Zoetis and Nidgen don't do a bad job. They do a great job. But, how does that work with an association? How can the associations collaborate in those organizations? Because, there's value all the way through the chain on that commercial getting engaged. And then you've got to then get to the next step of how it goes into the feed yard and linking that data back in terms of terminal traits that goes with it, which will eventually drive the value of that calf. But as we all know, this doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So, and it will take a lot of collaboration with a lot of different people, including the genomics companies, data companies, and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's exciting that you started on that journey. And, I also see feed conversion as being one of the big ones. We've got a lot of data on terminal traits. Yeah. The feed conversion's it's the next frontier in terms of truly getting under the skin of those traits and heritability.
Yeah. And I mentioned that kind of mid-range planning, strategic planning that we're doing. Those are open Zoom sessions to the membership. And it's not about coming in there with a set of plans. It's about starting to establish a need and then hearing their feedback to fully define it. I love the 131 solution. I do that with staff and friends all the time. Like, you come to me with a problem, like clearly define the problem, give me 3 alternatives, and then tell me your recommendation on the best alternative and why. And that just allows you to get in an execution mode a lot faster, when you're working with someone. And so that's our effort to work with the membership to say, because one of those areas of focus is how do we engage bull buying membership? And don't call it anything but what it is, because in this AI enriched system, they're contributing a massive amount of data. They're providing financial resources to our association through the genetic verification process of the feeder calves. That doesn't mean we look at that and say, oh, we're about to make a bunch of money. No. We look at that and say, how can we scope that for additional staffing, research, and opportunities? And then now all of a sudden, how are you opening the door to make them they already are the most important part of your business model. We just really haven't, I would argue all of us as breed associations haven't treated them as such. And so I know this, no one ever likes to have anything referred to as education, but how do we create that information exchange with them, coming and going, to say, open governance, let's hear what you're struggling with so that we can do what we do best, which is create resources to help you achieve those solutions that you're looking for.
Just when he started talking about 131, I thought he was talking about basketball defense there for a second. So.
I mean, I'm pretty tall, but I'm more a football player than basketball.
But no, I think that's right. And what I see a lot of times too is there's a segment of us as breed association members that sometimes take a position of fear. I'm afraid that, a commercial guy's going to get EPDs, or a commercial guy's going to get this, or, and I don't want that competition. And I think it's important, and I encourage them all the time, is not to operate your decisions based on fear of what's going to happen, because probably going to happen, right? I mean, if there's a need for it, and if a commercial person wants an EPD, they're going to find a place to get it, right? It may not be from you, and it might be from you, right? Or it might be from your competitor. And but if they want it, there's somebody's going to fill that need, and so don't be afraid of it. You look at it as an opportunity to get better. And I think that's, as I encourage anyone listening that thinks about, hey, this is, I don't want somebody to get my data, or I don't want somebody to get this. I think there's opportunities around that, to collaborate, to see it as an opportunity to get better, to improve, to whatever.
The funny thing is those 4 different bull buyer market research things, we look a lot of interesting things around media consumption, planning, looking back 3 years, forward 3 years in terms of their operational planning. You want to know one of the more interesting things I noticed out of all those? We have this really deep perception that we've got these seed stock suppliers and we have these commercial producers that are bull buyers, there's a lot more in between there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that have some registered cows, but probably identify more as a commercial producer. And there's people navigating in both directions. There's producers that were traditionally seed stock, and due to market circumstances, they're evolving their operation to just being commercial. That sounded pretty patronizing. That's not true at all. They found that moving to more of a commercial-based system was better for their operation. And there's certainly commercial producers that become great seed stock producers as well. And so it's more of a spectrum than people give it credit for. And that's all the more reason to open communication in and around these decision-making spots.
Yeah, I agree. I see, I participated in large group commercial operations. And what I found fascinating early on was, the question was asked, how many of these big, large producers are making their own bulls, right? A lot of them are making their own bulls. Yeah. Like 80% of them are making their own bulls. But they don't know what they have. And without our data and our information, they think theirs is as good as the next purebred breeder down the road, right? Or wherever their bull supplier is. And 99% of the time, it's not.
Yeah.
But without them knowing that information, without them getting that information and seeing that information, they just assume, well, my bull's sired by the same bull that the purebred guy's using down the road. He's got to be as good.
Yeah.
And so if we change that mindset and say, okay, maybe one in the 20 you're making is as good, but the other 19 are holding you back compared to what the purebred guy is supplying, because generally he's into cutting edge, and his female population's better and his bull population's better. And so he's making genetic progress because what he does, right? And he just makes genetic progress that much faster.
And to your point, that separation of their seed stock, their commercial, like the number of commercial producers you'd walk on there that are doing more data collection than a seed stock did 10 years ago. And like they're more like a seed stock, but they're just not registering cattle. Right. And who's the experts on how to run an operation like that? Breed associations. Right. Yet that's why I say, like, I'm really passionate about how breed associations move into that commercial space, because you have that knowledge. Yet I still think there's more opportunity for you to be educating, engaging, and then, what's the best way to build a business? You help your customer be successful, and your customer is your commercial producer.
There's nothing greater than seeing your cattle grazing on lush green pasture.
Oh yeah, and nothing ruins that view like weeds and brush soaking up all the moisture and nutrients. Regardless of precipitation, we have to take care of our pastures. It doesn't rain grass.
The passion for cattle ranching starts early. So should the protection. Let's keep our pastures in good hands with Corteva Agriscience. To learn more, visit rangeandpasture.com.
So, Brett, as we start to wrap up here, is there anything else, any news that Charolais is participating in, or some interesting things that are going on with the association?
Yeah, part of our efforts of really understanding our role in the industry and collaborating with other groups, we're absolutely putting the pedal to the metal in understanding how different stakeholders in the industry can find value with the genetics. Like I mentioned before, it's about broadening and deepening those demand pathways. I know one thing that we're really proud to have been a part of is working with the Red Angus Association as they expanded their live animal spec. And so I had to learn a lot about branded beef initiatives and live animal specs, and there's a lot more for me to learn. But the exciting thing is, as we worked with Red Angus staff, we were able to start to create some opportunities for those smoky calves and those buckskin calves to go into a secondary Angus live animal spec. And so that doesn't mean that's tied to every single Angus branded program out there in the world. But those that would choose to accept that secondary Angus live animal spec now have the opportunity to not devalue mixed pins of colored cattle, but to look at black, red, smokies, buckskin calves, and to be able to bring those into those branded boxes and still put the term Angus on them. So that's a really key area of focus. Again, one that we're very proud to work with another breed association with. At this point, potential program capacity is around 700,000 head in terms of processors and branded programs that are using it. And again, we're just seeking to add value to those 1.1 million head and look for opportunities, multiple opportunities to create demand for the cattle. Several other areas that we're working on in the power yield study, I think, is a really great one that we share as part of our communication outreach now with those in the processing industry. That was the first look at that life cycle assessment, but we essentially looked at retail cutout value and boxed beef value and the dependency of yield in and around what we see with these heavier finish weights of calves coming through the chain. So it's really compelling. We'd invite folks to hop online and look at what the impact of yield actually is right now, knowing that it's just going to keep heading in that same direction. That is just where we are as an industry. We're doing more with less. We also established our own live animal spec to tie to some Charolais specific branded programs in and around some retail function and in and around a feasibility report, which we'll be releasing here on August 11th. Very excited to work with those producers that are looking for a closed chain approach to understanding marketing all the way back to that genetic selection aspect, and then to offer that in a very customized, branded boutique, almost like a craft beer experience. And now, as we look at the ability to put additional claims on cattle, to be able to understand we know they're very versatile in the chain, but how to give even more opportunities for those cattle. That's what really gets us excited about some of these projects, and knowing that, again, our members are in complete control of those things as they move forward. And then you use things like the AI tools to even continue to accentuate the understanding of how red meat yield is going to continue to play a really important part in producing the nation's beef supply. So working across all those retail fronts, there's actually another retail opportunity that'll be coming online. Long story short, it's the opportunity to in a short time frame forward contract your calves, and then ultimately pull some of that value post-marketing back to those calves as well. But the key to unlock those doors is to enroll those calves with genetic verification through Char Advantage. That gets them exposure into all these buying bases. That allows folks to know where they are, and more importantly, what the genetics behind them are. So one of the other key components, and this has actually been a little while ago, but we did update economic assumptions around our terminal index, TSI. And so we're really pleased with how that goes. And of course, that is a very fundamental part of simplifying the understanding of the genetics that's a part of that genetic verification program, so that a cattle feeder at a glance can be sure that the genetics of those Charolais bulls, they were certainly in the spot that they understood how to be able to value them quickly. But yeah, for us, it's looking out there. That collaboration, it doesn't end with other breed associations. It doesn't end with other industry folks. I mean, we know, and we're being much more thorough in explaining the role of our genetics and value of data to create those opportunities, not only for cattle feeders, but all the way through the rest of the chain. So, yeah.
And I know, just to iterate that, like, we do a lot of work with the Red Angus side, and they feel equally, passionate to work with you guys. So I think it's great to see that level of collaboration, and that's real money. Those live animal specs it's an upper 2/3 program, an upper 2/3 bonus on the grid, and people are making good money out of that now. So,
yeah, and think about what a grid is. I mean, that's the exciting thing about all this. I mean, we're tugging at these fundamentals that we've created in our market, but we've also created a lot of these fundamentals without a more clear picture of everything that goes into it. So as we're talking about all this innovation, and we're allowing folks to more fully understand how to get cattle to those positions, we're excited to explore additional grid opportunities as we work with those other folks throughout the rest of the industry.
So, Brett, I also know, not just the the AI stuff you're doing, but you're doing some amazing stuff thinking about video capture and how you do that. And you mentioned it briefly, but, tell us, we were chatting about it briefly offline. Tell us the really cool stuff.
Yeah. So, you think about establishing the ability for Charolais bull buyers to opt cattle in for this genetic verification by using their cell phones and capturing video. We think about these AI enriched cattle feeding aspects, but if you've been in a feed yard ever, particularly larger ones, you get into some interesting equipment challenges and weather challenges. And for us to scale this in the way that we want to, we're not going to be in a position to mount cameras on every single pen that's out there. So we talked about that earlier. When you think about technology adoption, it needs to be so applicable and so easy and bring all this value. And so actually, thanks to things like this, and you think about the amount of processing power that's in your phones being greater than what it took us to land on the moon. And now you carry that around in your pocket all the times. But these are meta glasses. And so when we're using image capture, particularly video image capture at multiple frames per second, to be able to fully articulate the value and understanding of the performance of the cattle, you love the idea of having some stationary mounted areas, but also you got to have a very mobile aspect to that video capture as well. And so as we work through that, things like this, and these are certainly sunglasses, but not see-through, but they give those that are mobile, such as pen riders or managers, the ability to walk through cattle and ultimately see a real-time look at weight and start to get that real-time understanding of conversion and efficiency. And really, we're just looking for those additional data points that may not have to be a mounted camera on every single pen. So whether it's this, other very mobile applications of the image capture, it's all about capturing as many phenotypic records in the moment to understand those interesting things that we've never valued or understood in terms of feed efficiency. When you think about feed efficiency, when do you measure it?
Across the entire feeding period.
Yeah.
One outcome.
And when do you measure seed stock feed efficiency?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was talking about the feedlot.
Both relevant points.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that we're feeding cattle much longer, we're certainly seeing concerns in some populations around bovine congestive heart failure. We're certainly seeing concerns around more research being done in terms of feed efficiency and efficient growth and resource utilization into that 15, 16, 1,700 pound steer. And so being able to really use technology like this, the industry's changing. And so this is making it more nimble for us to change with it. And this is creating a set of tools, again, thanks to some very creative thought, that's going to allow us to use that information to make those better decisions.
And the biggest problem in beef industry is data capture.
100%.
That has been the restriction on AI in this industry, is actually having enough consistent data. It's the challenge with building out really, really good indexes within EPDs as well. So super exciting. And I think you could have a role on the Blues Brothers Part 3, but it'll be all good.
There's surely a better model for these things than me. Until we find it, I guess we'll try to fill in the gaps.
Sounds good. No, amazing.
So there's a lot going on at Charolais.
There is.
And I think it's cool. We're positioning breed associations, especially Charolais, to be relevant in the future to the cattle industry and its breeders. So thanks for joining us on the Future of Beef, and exciting to hear what's going on in the future of Charolais.
And you've definitely made Jim and Jess's day.
Good. Well, I'd be totally remiss if I didn't give just a substantial amount of credit for all these things to staff and board and membership.
Mm-hmm.
I like to joke that I just work there, and that's true. I'm surrounded by a staff that is equally passionate about enabling success for these folks. And, if you're curious about Charolais, we've got this very approachable, very committed, mission-minded staff that would love to talk to you about it. And we've got a board that is equally approachable and mission-minded and open-minded. And so we would love to visit with anyone as they have, just are curious about things that we're doing. And we hope to be able to work with any producer that's interested in that. But again, I absolutely, before I sign off, I need everyone to understand, again, no one does it alone, especially me. And so big thanks to the people that actually make these things happen.
Stay tuned. It's time for Ian, Jess, and I to go behind the beef. So that was a fun one, huh? Good to have Brett in.
Yeah, look, it's amazing to see someone in a breed association innovating like they are, and really pushing the boundaries. And you got to be ready to make mistakes. I've been there, to be able to innovate, the support he must have from the board and the membership to make mistakes, right? That's the exciting thing and that lets him innovate. And so, look, breed associations are just such a critical part of the future of this industry. If we want to keep the independence of small ranchers and everything else, breed associations are those non-profits that let us genomics, EPDs, all of that be funneled through in a way that, smooths it out for everyone, and we don't get these data silos happening all over the place. That said, they have a risk of becoming their own data silos if they're not willing and open to collaborate. And I think, Brett's really trying to work out how he goes through.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I always challenge breed associations to do what Brett's doing, innovate and change with the industry and adapt. And because if you don't, you're going to end up like the AKC Kennel Club, right? I mean, you're going to keep pedigrees on dogs and win shows. And so, which is fine if that's what your business model is. But I think to be relevant in the industry, you have to evolve, you have to change, you have to collaborate, you have to share, you have to, do some of these things. And it's exciting to see the breed associations do that.
I think obviously from my standpoint, I've always been a big proponent of a Charolais and a feedlot, right? But what I find so refreshing is the Charolais breed association right now is looking to give everybody opportunity within that breed, right? And so they realize where their cattle have value and then trying to find other avenues of value for other producers within their breed, right? And so it's exciting for me to see more and more commercial type application of the product and get more data on the commercial side of things to have a great feedback loop into the seed stock area of the Charolais business and breed to, offer higher quality cattle for the feedlot.
Yeah, and in the commercial world, in commercial supply chains, we're capturing so much data now, and none of that really is coming back to those breed associations, none of it. And that's a missed opportunity, right? That is absolutely a missed opportunity. Instead of going from 20 phenotypes on a bull and their progeny, you're going to 1,000 phenotypes as you start to put that across multiple, especially when you get to AI, not artificial intelligence, but artificial insemination. And, Charolais is doing a lot with beef on dairy as well within the jerseys. And, there's a lot of opportunities to capture data there. And if you just leave that as that's just commercial and not pull it back to help drive EPDs, genetically enhanced EPDs, huge missed opportunity. But I think Brett understands that. I think most of the breed associations are coming to understand that. But now, these are producers who aren't technologists. And there is a need to be able to translate how secure technology can be, that it's not a risk to these breed associations. And I think there's probably been a fear of technology in the past, but actually, we can put line level data point security on a piece of data now that means that only that producer and the breed association or whoever they choose to share with it means that it's completely secure for those people whose data it is. And it's not our data when it's in a technology system, it's the producer's data. And I think, some of that fear we need to help people get over. Again, let's not govern by fear, but because the opportunity is so great for these associations to be able to get more data and just move forward and progress and innovate.
Yeah. No, I think that's the exciting part of it. And like I said earlier, I think it's important that if you have something that's you think's unique or your animals are unique or whatever, it's more important to be plugged into the right system and provide that data back and create value for your animals than anything else you can do, because that's going to residually make your animals more worth more money.
Well, and we've discussed in the past, the more up-to-date data you can get, data that's 10 years old is old data. It's already been put into the EPDs. It's the new data and the new breeding and the new genetics coming through that's the most critical data. And to get that, if that takes months, years to get back into the association, that's, again, a missed opportunity to try and build and iterate faster.
Right. Yeah, especially as fast as we're churning genetic valuations these days and stuff like that. I mean, some of them change weekly. And to be able to get in there and take advantage of that, you're getting ahead of the game, right?
Yeah, don't get me started on that one. It changes weekly, and then every producer still has to go in and download them into an Excel spreadsheet and upload them into whatever system they're doing. We make it so hard for producers to then use them for insight on the ranch. And, number of seed stock people we work with are like, okay, let's get the download, let's re-upload it. And when you're changing on a weekly basis, it's just hours out of a day of someone every week if you're really doing that. And we could make this so much easier to make so much more value out of those EPDs for seed stock and for commercial producers. Anyway, topic I'm passionate about. But that was a great one.
Yeah. Yep. That's it for this episode of the Future of Beef Show. And a big thank you to our guest for joining us and sharing their experience and insights on this topic. Hit the subscribe button for more great episodes like this one. If you want to dig deeper into what you heard today, head over to futureofbeef.com, where you'll find free resources and helpful links. Don't forget, we'll pick one listener to win this exclusive Future of Beef Yeti Cooler. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and drop us a message for a chance to win. Until next time, keep your boots on the ground and your eyes on the future.